China via a new pipeline and will settle the new gas sales in euros, bolstering an energy alliance with Beijing amid Moscow's strained ties with the West over Ukraine and other issues. So while the U.S. is trying to push the narrative of Russia being the bad guy, all right, Russia and China are becoming more intertwined. When you look at a deal like that, all right, a deal like that means that you're willing to protect your interests. All right. And China is going to be willing to protect and offer resources to Russia, all right, to maintain this relationship. All of these things play a part in the war that shall come upon the planet. All right. And everyone is picking sides. Now, continuing, it says Gazprom, which has a monopoly on Russian gas exports by pipeline, agreed to supply Chinese state energy major CNPC with 10 billion cubic meters of gas a year, the Russian firm and a Beijing-based industry official said. First flows through the pipeline, which will connect Russia's Far East region with Northeast China, were due to start in 2 to 3 years, the source said in comments that were later followed by an announcement of the deal by Gazprom. Russia already sends gas to China via its Power of Siberia pipeline, which began pumping supplies in 2019. And by shipping liquefied natural gas, it exported 16.5 billion cubic meters of gas to China in 2021. Now, I want to get down to the summary. All right, and then we'll move on. All right, so I'll get this. You know what? That's it on this one. Yeah. All right, so this is another one I want to touch. All right, it says China, Russia coordinated positions on Ukraine, says Chinese Foreign Ministry. Russian President Vladimir Putin shakes hands with Chinese President Xi Jinping during their meeting on the sidelines of a BRICS summit in Brasilia, Brazil, November 13, 2019. Now, again, this is dated February 3rd. All right, it says China and Russia coordinated their positions on Ukraine during a meeting between both countries, foreign ministers in Beijing on Thursday. According to a statement by the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Ukraine says Russia has positioned 115,000 troops near its border, stoking fears of a looming attack. Moscow denies any such plan, but international concern that Russia might be gearing up for war is running high. Russia has asked NATO to bar Ukraine from joining and to pull out of Eastern Europe. The United States and its allies have warned that an invasion would trigger tough sanctions and have rejected Russians' demands about NATO. China expressed understanding and support for Russia's position on security regarding Russia's relationship with the United States and NATO. The statement said after Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov. All right, so China is basically saying they understand. They understand why Russia is doing what they're doing. Again, these two are in bed. They've made deals in energy, economic ties, all right, defense ties, all right, you name it. There's an article, and Lord will not be able to find it, that mentions them saying that there's no limits. And we're getting to a point where two countries like this are tired of being played as the outcast, and they're looking for ways around the influence of the West. This is why they did their gas deal in euros, because what that really does is it sows discord between the EU, NATO nations. Because somebody's going to want the bread. Somebody's going to want the deals that come with that kind of agreement. Somebody wants to be involved with it in some way, shape, or form. Germany getting most of their natural gas from Russia is a discord. All of these things are constructed by the Heavenly Father. All right. Now let's go to Proverbs 21:1. All right, and it reads, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, as the rivers of water. He turneth it whithersoever he will." And all of these deals down to the detail, all right, have been constructed by the mind of the Heavenly Father, all right, to bring about and force a world war. All right, and this is just the nature of prophecy. All right, the Lord gives us the general, and then through the Spirit, through watching, you can see the details that are going to lead to these prophecies being accomplished. Everyone is picking sides. Everyone is in the lunchroom, and the popular guy, everybody's getting tired of the popular guy, which is America. And now you have different guys who are starting to try to step up, all right, to take their place. You have nations who are betting on Russia as opposed to the United States, that are betting on the alliance of Russia and China over the United States and its allies. And this is going to equal up into a fight. All right, because America's not going to back down. They're not going to surrender. Or they're not going to negotiate with terrorists. All right, they've mentioned this type of rhetoric all the time, which means they're not going to give up the power seat. And this is going to equal up into a war. All right. Now, I want to touch a few more points on this. All right. It says, no, I think that's it. I'll read the last paragraph. It says, both sides coordinated their positions on regional issues of common concern, such as Ukraine, Afghanistan, and the situation on the Korean Peninsula, the statement said. Because again, the South China Sea is another hot topic. And you can easily see how they could sit at a table and say, look, you help me out with Ukraine or whatever may happen on my front, and I'll help you out in the South China Sea. You can easily see how that could be a conversation. It's in both of their interests. And the reason I brought out Proverbs, the 21st chapter, is because the Lord has placed this in the minds of these different kings to do these things. The Lord put the pomp and the pride in America and the West to do sanctions and to literally choke economies of Iran and Russia, to put them in a position where they have no choice but to fight, but to find a way to work around the establishment. Now, there's another article I want to touch, and it'll probably be the last one. Here it is, the Wadi Halba Shemel Shah. It says, Russia and China line up against U.S. in no limits partnership. Now, I'm highlighting these because China is a big player in the economy, all right, and Russia has developed a formidable missile defense system that can take on the air power of the West. And they've spent decades preparing themselves for that. So in essence, it's mutually beneficial for these two countries to work together if you're dealing with politics and power. If you're dealing with the logistics of war, it makes sense. This is why eventually this war is going to turn kinetic. It's going to turn into a hot war because, again, even now, with 115,000 men who are ready to kill on the border of the Ukraine, and the Ukrainian military, or whatever they have that is a military or fighting defense force, on the opposite end, with Javelin missiles from America, with equipment from America, with troops on their way to the Ukrainian border. This is a place of deep contention, and man, it's a hot spot. And anything can go wrong at any moment, at any second. Now, the deals that are being made with China and Russia put them in a position where they have to defend each other, just like the NATO countries have agreed to defend each other. Meaning they'll have to protect their interests. Having a no limits partnership means if your partner goes down, you go down with them. And I doubt very seriously that Putin, all right, and Xi Jinping have any plans on going down, even though they are, because the Lord's going to use this war to bring all these nations down. But he's forcing them to be in a position to make these kind of decisions that are eventually going to end up in war. All right, so let's read this, and then I'll grab a few scriptures, and then I'll hold the other articles for a part 2. All right, it says China and Russia proclaimed a deep strategic partnership on Friday to balance what they portrayed as the malign global influence of the United States as China's president Xi Jinping hosted Russia's Vladimir Putin on the opening day of the Beijing Winter Olympics. So they're looking at this. Look, it's clear, man. It's clear, man, through the spirit. War is coming. All right. In a joint statement, the two countries affirmed that their new relationship was superior to any political or military alliance of the Cold War era. Friendship between the two states has no limits. There are no forbidden areas of cooperation, they declared, announcing plans to collaborate in a host of areas, including space, climate change, artificial intelligence, and control of the internet. The agreement marked the most detailed and assertive statement of Russian and Chinese resolve to work together and against the United States to build a new international order based on their own interpretations of human rights and democracy. And that's a fancy way to say that they're trying to take the spot. They want the top spot. So now you got a contender who's fighting for the position that America's had for decades, centuries now. America in the West. And now your enemies are becoming strong enough, or you're becoming weak enough for them to challenge you, according to prophecy. Even those who are allied with you have to go through your enemies for the want of certain things. Germany, for example, needs gas from Russia. Now, if you, and I'll just cover it briefly. The United States had a meeting with Qatar. And that meeting, while they said all these good, fluffy things about Qatar, really that meeting was about them trying to find a way to supply some of their allies with gas if Russia decides they're not going to mess with the ops no more, that they're not going to sell gas to the ops. If Russia does that, a lot of these countries are going to starve. They're going to suffer for it. So the United States went to Qatar and tried to talk lovely, all right, to get them as a contingency, as a plan B, just in case Russia says, look, we're not supplying the ops no more. We don't care if your money green. All of these things are going to equal up into a war. And it shows you how blurred the lines are, because you have EU and NATO countries that do business with Russia and China. Qatar has contracts to give gas to China. I think China's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, consumer of energy, because a lot of things are made there. All of these things, these are just the details of why war is going to happen. That is more than just everybody just trying to show who has the biggest gun. It's money involved. And then in a language of countries, that's trillions, that's billions of dollars that are tied into different relationships that are on the opposite side of the fence. This is why the Lord said this, man. Joel chapter 3. And I want to jump down to verse 9. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. All right, so right now, nations are beating their pruning hooks into spears. Weak nations are saying they're strong. North Korea is an example. Iran, to a degree, is an example. But they're all under threat of war concerning the U.S. And they're all tired of being under the threat of war with nothing to defend themselves with. So they've turned their pruning hooks into spears. They've made deals with each other. If they jump you, they jump us all. And this is what you see playing out on the world stage. You have Russia in league with China and Iran as well, even though they're not being talked about as much in the recent news, all tying and ganging up together to take the spot. They're trying to take the global influence. They're not just trying to defend themselves. They're trying to take the spot because they understand that in their position, if they allow America to continue to push forth influence, they'll always be stuck where they are. Which not only means that they stay the same, but it means that their nation doesn't grow to a certain degree. It's a glass ceiling on their nation. And it's because of the policies and the alliances and the agreements that the West, all right, have had and held on to for so long. But now the world stage is beginning to change. And again, America's not going to lay down. And that's why the scriptures talk about the pride of their heart have deceived thee, because they're thinking that they're going to go into the war with all the allies that they have now, and they're not. Eventually, there's going to be a turning of the tables are going to turn. Some people are going to jump over the fence. According to prophecy, Turkey is going to be in league with Russia. Right now, Turkey is a NATO member. But according to prophecy, that will happen. How it plays out through the spirit, all right, we have to watch and wait and see. But it's beautiful when you see how detailed the Lord is and how he's forcing these nations into a conflict. Even if they wanted to not fight, they can't help it, because it's going to become a matter of life and death, or the destruction of your nation. These leaders are not just fighting for their own interests. They're fighting to defend the millions of people that look to them for leadership, which is another level of pressure. And it's a beautiful, beautiful situation that the Lord is putting together masterfully, man. And the number one spot is being challenged. And that means on both sides, they're going to have to go 0 to 100. For the Russians, they can't afford to allow America to get the nuclear ups on them, so to speak, because they understand that America has the nuclear capability. So they can't half step. China can't half step. China can't go into it alone. Russia can't go into it alone. This is why the Lord said, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Everybody has to pick a side. Now, there are going to be some so-called neutral nations, but the main players are going to be forced to pick a side. All right, now I'll just read a couple more paragraphs from this article and I'll close out. All right, it says, man, I'm going to read this paragraph again. It says, the agreement marked the most detailed and assertive statement of Russian and Chinese resolve to work together and against the United States to build a new international order based on their own interpretations of human rights and democracy. Steeped in ideological discourse, it was not clear whether it would immediately translate into an increase in tangible and practical cooperation, despite Putin trumpeting a new gas deal with China on Friday, or was intended as more of a statement of general policy intent. It says the two leaders are announcing their determination to stand together and to stand against the U.S. and the West, ready to withstand sanctions and contest American global leadership, said Daniel Russell of the Asia Society think tank, who served as the U.S. State Department's top diplomat for East Asia under the Obama administration. Yeah, so they're going to, and it makes sense. As a nation of people, if you keep getting taxed extra as a punishment to purposely keep your nation in a certain position, and you see another nation, all right, on the same level as you that's trying to go somewhere different, it makes sense that you'll team up. That's why in Isaiah the 14th chapter, it talks about them gathering themselves together, the chief ones, the kings of the nations, the dead. All right. Isaiah 14:9. Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. This is what Russia and China and their other allies are doing. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. And they're making deals. They're preparing. They're preparing actively. All right. With drills. All right. I believe it was last month. Not America, but Russia, China, and Iran. Russia, China, and Iran had military drills. It's not a game. These things cost lots of money, lots of resources to accomplish. Because they understand that war is inevitable. Otherwise, they're going to stay in this position forever. And the Lord is putting these nations in a fight or die scenario, man. This is, man, called Allah Yahweh Shemal Shah. It says again, the two leaders are announcing their determination to stand together and to stand against the U.S. and the West, ready to withstand sanctions and contest American global leadership. So they're going to offer the alternative. If you don't like working with the Americans, come over here. Come to death row. That's what they're offering these other nations. Another option. And even some of America's allies are going to start to choose that option. See, for a long time, the West and the U.S. had a monopoly on the planet. If you didn't work with them, you got stopped out. They had a monopoly on the planet. But the Lord, through the process of time, all right, in wars, the Lord used Ishmael to distract the U.S. for a portion of time, to give Russia the ability to build themselves up and China the ability to build themselves up to a degree that they can now make deals together and become stronger, strong enough to fight. This is why it says the weak are going to say, I'm strong. Why? They're making deals with each other. China's got technology. Russia's got missile defense. Match made in hell. Iran, I don't know their exact military capability, but I know that they have a lot of personnel. They have a lot of influence in the Middle Eastern region, contrary to what's being pushed in the U.S. media and the West's media. All of these things are going to play a part in what we're going to see in the coming years, man. Lord willing, we out of here sooner than later. But this is the time of prophecy. There's a beautiful time through the Spirit. If you understand what the timeline of prophecy means, it means that the Lord is going to bring about the kingdom of heaven on earth. But before that, these things must play out. And it's beautiful when you look at the details of how the Lord is forcing these nations into this situation. All right. Now, I want to jump down because, again, this is, man, I may do another part 2 and bring back this article. It says, while not formally allied, the two are making common cause as a tactical matter to better defend their respective interests and their authoritarian systems from Western pressure. And it makes perfect sense. Jonathan Ayal of the London-based Royal United Services Institute said the declaration marked a frontal rebuttal of the U.S. and Western view of the world and a possible building block toward a military alliance. It's the most explicit articulation of the making the world safer dictatorship strategy. He said it is a historic point because they both feel cornered and they feel their moment has arrived to state their vision of the world and promote it aggressively. That's prophecy, man. Isaiah 14 and 9 again, hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? So they're raising up from their thrones, man. All right. For what? For war. They're tired of playing the little boy role. And the Lord's given them just enough to feel strong. All right. Joel 3:10. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong, man. Man, this is beautiful. And what I noticed is that this guy from London mentioned that they're cornered. And who's doing is that? Ultimately, it's the Lord. They feel their back is on the wall. Their back is against the wall. Russia is dealing with a situation of basically the U.S. putting personnel, military and missiles right there on their border. What would you do? So now they're forced to move. The Lord is forcing their hands. When you go into Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, the Lord said he would. Let's get that. And again, I'll close out. Ezekiel 38:4, and it reads, "And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth and all thine army." And that's what the Lord is doing. He's forcing these guys. He's forcing their hand. Man, this is beautiful, man. Call Allah Yahweh Shai. All right, this is a great article. I'll just get this last paragraph. It says, the two countries have moved closer together as both have come under pressure from the West on a host of issues, including their human rights records and Russia's military buildup near Ukraine. And they tired of hearing the mouth of America telling them how they can and what they can and can't do, how they should run their country or not. They tired of it, man. Naturally. And this is going to force a kinetic full-scale war. All right. It says the timing of their announcement was highly symbolic at a China-hosted Olympics that the United States has subjected to a diplomatic boycott. So America said, we're not getting involved with this Olympics. And Russia stepped up and said, all right, well, us in China, we just going to announce our vision for the future. And it's different from yours. Man, this is beautiful, man. I had something else. Let me touch Second Esdras, the 15th chapter, because I just want to deal with a few words concerning Moab, all right, which is the so-called Chinese, all right, because what they've done is they basically studied Esau, particularly those in the West. They've studied their blueprint. They've watched how they've been able to maintain the power, and they've taken notes, and they've added some of Esau's tools to maintain their power to their own arsenal. All right. Economic hitmen. For some years back, you can look it up and do the research for yourself. There was a strategy that the United States used by going into countries, all right, giving them loans that they couldn't pay back. And when they couldn't pay back those loans, they would take the natural resources, or they would take a area from that country. China's doing that now with Africa and other places, but Africa comes to mind first and foremost. I believe some Latin American countries as well. But they're basically loaning the money that they've made from everything being made in China. And they're giving these countries deals that they can't pay back. And when they can't pay it back, they'll have to sign over a port for 100 years or sign over some resources. They learned that from America. All right. Real quick. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 15. And I want to start at 46. All right, and it reads, "And thou, Asia, that art partaker of the hope of Babylon, and art the glory of her person, woe be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her, and hast decked thy daughters in whoredom, that they might please and glory in thy lovers, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee. Thou hast followed her that is hated in all her works and inventions. Therefore, saith Yahweh Shai, I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence, to waste thy houses with destruction and death." Now, I want to bring this out in closing because, again, what China's doing is what they've learned from the current ruler of the planet, which is the so-called white man, beginning with those in the West, particularly the daughter of Babylon, which is America. A lot of the things that they've implemented, they've learned from the current ruler. As the scriptures say, as the judge is, so is the people. And now these things that they've learned, they're trying to beat their teacher at it. And it's beautiful to witness because, again, it's going to equal up in the war. You don't spend millions and billions of dollars on drills for nothing, or millions or trillions or millions and billions of dollars pushing your troops, 115,000, according to the article that we read, to the border of the Ukraine, which costs you millions, maybe billions of dollars in resources for nothing. They're fighting to defend and push forward and take out the top dog, which right now is the U.S. and the West. And it's very ironic, if you will, that Moab is using the blueprint that they learned from their father, the devil, which is the so-called white man, and their strategy and how they've maintained power. This is why they don't wear their ancient clothing. They wear suits. Giving nations loans they can't handle is a blueprint, a skill that they've learned from watching the so-called Americans, how they maintained influence and power through those corporations. They've witnessed Babylon the Great, which is America, steal, and now they're starting to steal the technology of America. This was a fight that Trump was dealing with. The theft of intellectual property, trade secrets. But they've learned that from the current ruler. And this is why, through the spirit, wickedness never pays. All right. It's just delayed. The judgment is just delayed, but it eventually, all right, the consequence is going to show forth. And that's the time that we're in. The same ones who are allied together are now starting to pick sides because it's getting real. All right. So Lord willing, this was edifying. I know it was long winded, but I want to go through some details through the spirit. All right. And touch on it and how it relates to the scriptures. All right. Again, I'll end with Revelation, the 11th chapter and the 14th verse. And it reads, the second kingdom, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. All right. And that's the time that we're in. All right. Call Allah Yahweh Shah. With that, I want to say shalom.